Al, in really trying to understand what free will means, I keep coming across this concept of agency, that I'm an agent. What does it mean to be an agent?
Yes, unfortunately, I have a view about that that's so simple that it sounds simplistic or simple-minded. But it's this. An agent is a being that acts. So, for example, a canine agent is a dog that acts, and a human agent is a human being that acts. So the real action, as it were, is in understanding what acting is. So an agent is just going to be a being that does that.
Okay, so but let's pursue that. Why then is the concept of agency so important to understand free will?
Well, frankly, I don't think that it is. I think that the concept of action is important for understanding free will, and we just get agency for free out of action. Once we know what acting is, we know what agency is. So, and then among actions, if there are free actions, there are going to be free ones and unfree ones. And what would be interesting is figuring out what separates, free from unfree actions. Now, there are easy cases of unfree actions. Somebody's holding a gun to my head and demanding that I hand over all my money, and I only have my normal $10 anyway. It's easy to do. I hand it over, we say the action's unfree. But what about stuff that isn't so clearly unfree? We're not sure whether to count it as free or not free. How do we do that? And there things get more complicated. For example, you might wonder how much of a role does conscious thinking need to play in producing actions in order for the actions to be free? And that turns out to be a deep and interesting question. As you know, there's evidence people have offered for the claim that we never actually consciously decide anything, that all of our decisions are made for us unconsciously, and then we become conscious of those decisions a bit later. It's an interesting claim. I don't believe it, but I want to just skip that now and talk about a closely related question. This is just a purely hypothetical question now, but suppose those scientists were right, and suppose that, in fact, we never consciously made decisions. We made them unconsciously, and let's say we became conscious of them a third of a second later. Okay. Now, would that destroy free decision-making? Would it stand in the way of free actions? Well, imagine that in some cases where we make these unconscious decisions, we do a lot of very difficult and thorough deliberating about what it would be best to do. We can use an example of a job offer, or you're thinking about whether to propose marriage or ask for the divorce, something like that, something serious and important. And you weigh up options and you think about it long and hard. And maybe you think about it so long and so hard that you're exhausted and you think, I've got to sleep on it. I can't decide tonight, I'm going to go to bed. And you wake up in the morning and you're still worried about it. You think about it again, and then you think, I've got to go to work. I just have to put this out of my mind for now. And so you do. And then maybe on the third day you think, okay, now I've really got to decide what to do. I've got to propose marriage now. I might lose her. I've got to accept or reject the job offer. They've given me a deadline or whatever. And suppose you think about it long and hard, weigh up all these reasons, do this complicated thinking, and just a quarter of a second before you become conscious of your decision, it was made for you unconsciously. What if all that conscious thinking played a huge role in generating that decision for you? And what if there's just a little bit of lag time in us between decision production and conscious decision detection?
But that's an enormous difference. It says that ultimate decision to make the decision is something that I'm not conscious of. Doesn't that make our conscious experience what's called an epiphenomenon, something that looks real but has no causative effect? Doesn't that make all of our conscious life a facade?
No, I don't think so. All it would show, really, is that we're just a little bit slow on the uptake, that we've actually made the decision, but unconsciously, a bit before we become aware of it. But all that conscious processing might have played an enormous role in generating the decision that was produced. It's just that the generation happens before we detect it. That doesn't put consciousness out of the loop. That's the thing. It's in the loop. So these studies, and again, I don't agree that they show that we make all of our decisions unconsciously, sure. But even if they did, they leave it wide open that conscious processing plays a huge role in getting us to that point sometimes where we make these unconscious decisions. Now, in the studies, there is never a reason to prefer, in the scientific studies, this option over that. Or you might have 3 or 4 options to choose among. Often you just have 2. Sometimes it's when to begin a certain action, like when to flex your wrist. And there's no reason to flex it at this moment rather than that or that. No reason to press this button or that. Sure. Nothing hangs on it. So there's nothing to deliberate about. There's nothing consciously to reason about. You just pick. You randomly pick. It's like going into a supermarket and you have your list of food to buy, and you have what I always have, 16-ounce jar of Planters peanuts. And I go to the Planters peanuts display and I just reach out and pick one. I don't think better reasons for this one, for that. Okay, so where there is no conscious reasoning involved in the process, it's not even surprising that if there are decisions made, they're not consciously made. And it's a huge leap from that sort of scenario to proposing marriage, asking for a divorce, accepting or rejecting a job offer, and even if we're a bit slow to pick up on our decisions, big deal. Maybe consciousness played a huge role in generating them.
I appreciate that, but here is the big deal. When we talk about an agent, it implies a unified whole that's looking at these things. But if we look at it from the standpoint of science, that unified whole, this agent, is just made up of all the component parts of our brains working together in different ways, and we have an illusion of an agent.
Yeah, I think that the agent is just whatever that thing is that acts. And in the case of human beings, it's you and it's me. And then sometimes people ask me, well, what do you mean by you and me? And I say, go look at yourself in a full-length mirror. You'll see what I'm talking about. Right. I really just mean the whole human being. And the whole human being is a collection of all these parts. It's an organized collection.
But the feeling is that there's a real, we feel this integrated unity. And some people say that that's an illusion of all these different subsystems, and given we're attending to one rather than the other, and we have this feeling, but it's really not the case. And the two are tied together, is the nature of the agent, the nature of the consciousness of the being as a unified system, or as the compilation of parts, and we have the illusion of the unity.
Yeah, I understand. I think the compilation of the parts, it's an organized compilation, is the unity. There's nothing more there. But that's good enough for action. And we know we have actions in the canine realm, in the feline realm, and so on. We don't worry about that. We don't say, oh, they're not really acting. There's just an illusion of acting. Well, we act as they act. But it looks like conscious reasoning of a kind they're not capable of, really sophisticated, complicated conscious reasoning, sometimes plays a role in generating decisions we make and influencing our behavior. Try this sometime. Try planning a complicated trip. I don't know if you plan your own trips, but try planning one, like maybe to Beijing and then you go back to Tokyo unconsciously, and see if you can do it.